Well, as I'm sure most of us are aware by now, the theme for this month is interdependence. It's not a word that I would use very often. One of those words where I have to stop for a microsecond and remind myself, what does that mean again? And so, when considering interdependence for the message at today's service, I had a hard time bringing the idea of it deeply into my thinking. Sure, it sounds perfectly reasonable and logical. We support the lives of others around us, and they in turn support us. Even interdependence in a larger context makes sense. Mother Earth needs us to treat her with consideration and mindfulness, even as she provides the living world that we live in. But it seems to contradict, in a way, another value that I at least have always held close. That of taking personal responsibility for one's life. For me, a meaningful life has to do with finding it within ourselves to engage with life, to work with all the resources at our command, to explore, to play, to address problems, to understand and act. And while a whole lot of my personal engagement with life was truly enabled by the people in the world around me, a whole lot as well seemed to happen despite, or even in opposition to, people and circumstances. I found often enough that I had to depend not on others, but on myself. Now, just to be clear, this message today is not to disparage interdependence, but to explore, in the company of all of you, how this value, this understanding, can live deeply down in our hearts, instead of remaining mostly in our heads. In the company of logic and reason, but not faith. Oh, to be sure, like many of you, I have no trouble coming up with a list of those people through the years to whom I have a deep, abiding gratitude. And throughout my life, I have felt grateful for the privilege of being alive. But interdependence in a wider, deeper, spiritual sense has often left me uninspired. I guess this has to do with the difference between intellectual understanding and intuitive awareness. We might know the logical, reasonable meaning of interdependence, but deeper insight, enabled by experience, has not yet been found, at least for me. I suspect the issue has been that any deeper understanding of interdependence, for me at least, would also have to incorporate values like self-reliance, responsibility, and engagement into it. Where do they integrate into the one truth? How do I find that understanding? I believe that one way to start is in the writings of the Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who takes the idea of interdependence and develops it into something deeper and more far-reaching. It is that we not only depend on one another and on the world around us, but that our existence, our identity, what we are, is tied up in a profound way with each other, and more with all the world around us. We are, in fact, all of this. He calls this interbeing, the idea that everything is interconnected as one thing. He explains that nothing can exist by itself. Everything has to interbe with everything else. For example, a flower is made up of non-flower elements such as sunshine, rain, and soil. Without these elements, the flower can't exist. I'd like to quote, well, I have written here, I'd like to quote a little bit, but after I wrote this, I realized I have 2 long quotes here from Thich Nhat Hanh, so not something I would normally do, but he says it so much better, where he explains interbeing, or how things are. He started by holding up a piece of paper, like this one. He said, if you were a poet, you will see clearly that there is a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. Without a cloud, there will be no rain. Without the rain, the trees cannot grow, and without trees, we cannot make paper. The cloud is essential for the paper to exist. If the cloud is not here, the sheet of paper cannot be here either. So we can say that the cloud and the paper are. He goes on to say, interbeing is not a word in the dictionary yet. It probably is by now. But if we combine the prefix inter with the verb to be, we have a new verb, interbe. Without a cloud, we cannot have paper, so we can say that the cloud and the sheet of paper are. If we look into this sheet of paper even more deeply, we can see the sunshine in it. If the sunshine is not there, the forest can't grow. In fact, nothing can grow. And so we know that the sunshine is also in this sheet of paper. The paper and the sunshine are. And if we continue to look, we can see the logger who cut the tree and brought it to the mill to be transformed into paper. We know that the logger cannot exist without his daily bread, and therefore the wheat that became his bread is also in this sheet of paper. And the logger's mother and father are in it too. When we look in this way, we see that without all these things, this sheet of paper cannot exist. This ends the quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, at least the first one. And yes, it's not an easy idea for us to wrap our heads around. We know clearly enough that certain things had to be done for the paper to be here. But Thich Nhat Hanh goes further and says that those things are part of the identity of the paper, that the sheet of paper is, in a sense, like an icon that signifies or indicates much more than what you can easily see. Now, there is another conclusion that he makes that perhaps you haven't spotted yet. It's a belief or an assertion that is at the very heart of Zen Buddhism. It is this: since we are inextricably part of all that surrounds us, and all that surrounds us is part of what we are, then it doesn't really make much sense to think of ourselves as islands, standalone beings, as though we exist in the foreground and apart from all the rest of the world. We all exist together. Nothing exists without dependence on other things. Any one thing or person cannot be said to have a reality or an identity that is independent of everything else. In this way of thinking, what Thich Nhat Hanh calls interbeing, this is one thing, a living, energetic process constantly flowing and changing, every thread in a fabric being supported and entwined with all the rest. We are one. According to Zen Buddhism and Thich Nhat Hanh, not only are we interdependent, but so interdependent that nothing, not me or you or anything, can truly be said to have an independent existence, having no reference or dependence on anything else. Interbeing means that who we are, at most, is one aspect of all that is. So here's another quote. When we look deeply into a flower, we have the impression that the flower is full of everything. There is sunshine inside, there's cloud inside, there is earth, minerals, even our consciousness is in the flower. Time, space, everything. It looks like everything in the cosmos has come together to help the flower to manifest as a wonder. So the fact is, the flower is full of the cosmos, but it doesn't have a separate existence because a flower cannot be by herself alone. The flower is made up of non-flower elements. Sunshine is a non-flower element. A cloud is a non-flower element. And a multitude of non-flower elements come together to produce a flower. So a flower cannot be by herself alone. To be means to interbe. A flower has to interbe with the sunshine, the cloud, with everything else. She doesn't have a separate existence. And this ends the second quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. So I know that's a lot to grasp. It's not the way we normally think of ourselves or anything else. Here's a little thought experiment that helps me. Imagine a campfire. You're sitting by a roaring campfire. Each tongue of flame rises up and falls back in microseconds. Now, slow everything down. Imagine the campfire is in super slow motion, so that what might be in real time a fire lasting an hour or two is slowed down to a video that lasts, say, 100 years. Each tongue of flame now rises and falls in the space of weeks or months, so slowly that you might be tempted to name each tongue of flame, that really tall one with the mysterious ghostly glow, and talk about its unique qualities and history. It was unlike any other tongue of flame so far, because it is there for a long time. Our tendency is to see it as an individual, separate thing. And you wouldn't be wrong. In one sense, it is a unique individual thing. We can and do talk about it and name it. That's the way we think. That's how we communicate. But it doesn't have an existence apart from the campfire. You can't take it home as a souvenir of the camp out, like the flower or the piece of paper. It is there as one fleeting aspect or phenomena of something much larger. This is Thich Nhat Hanh's take on interdependence. It is interdependence of existence. So let's go back to self-reliance, personal responsibility, values that I've relied upon and used as guiding principles throughout my life. What is personal responsibility in relationship to interbeing? Let's consider this. If there is this intimate inner connection between all of us, then perhaps self-reliance or personal responsibility might best be understood as our shared reliance in a shared responsibility. Qualities that are one of the beautiful qualities of this one life that we are part of. Perhaps the impulse to engage, to become involved, to explore, to play, to refine, to respond, to reflect on, is part of our common impulse, us, a quality of life itself that we are part of, perhaps even a quality of the universe itself. Now, because of my personal circumstances these days, when I think of the driving impulse to engage, I think of toddlers and kittens. For them, everything is something to engage with. There is nothing that is boring. We are one from quarks to atoms, to cells, to bodies, to families, to life, to the world. And each part of that is like a toddler or a kitten busily doing what it is capable of doing, living, exploring, engaging, while being held up, supported, enabled to exist by all the other parts. So let us be interdependent and do that by drawing upon all that we have been given. Vigor, intelligence, curiosity, moral discernment, and give back to all the other parts that rely upon what we are able to give. Perhaps we don't need to be self-reliant, but to find and embrace our reliance, to discover and embrace faith in the oneness that we share, that sustains us all. Perhaps we might take care that the self doesn't get too much in the way. The reliance is a beautiful quality of the whole, us, the one, the human spirit. When we act as part of life itself, as part of the living earth, as much as an individual. We can trust in life because we are one with life. We take responsibility on behalf of the whole. Not self-reliance, but reliance on the one. Not personal responsibility, but the responsibility of the one, of life itself. I think that when in mindfulness or meditation or prayer, When we remember ourselves, this one is what we remember. May we all be well.